about. Trying to figure out what it's all about. Existentialist. Am I worth anything or just discount? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Spending time all alone.
That was the great sounds of Watson with Outside on WNHH LP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Prestige, with my partner in crime, Long Island raised, Elm City made, E.Z. BlueZ is in the building. Easy BlueZ, you're better introductions more than me. Who do we have to stay on behind the brand?
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you a different type of story. I love to tell stories. I'm going to tell you a different type of story. I'm going to tell you a story about a season and a reason. Okay, some people are put in your life for a season. Some people are put in your life for a reason.
Correct.
And it's sometimes when you go through that life, those people that you thought were there just for a season were actually there for a reason.
I understand.
And many, many moons ago, when I was just a little easy about the size of someone's ankle, I got to grow up through the 90s when music was beautiful. I got to go to high school when right before music changed to the weirdness that was so much not okay. And it was incredible to be in that moment and to watch the world change from just the dirty, weird kids wearing flannel to now everybody's wearing flannel. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience. And I got to have that experience with this next guest. This next guest and I go way, way back to the times when you were hanging out in the 7-Eleven parking lot or the Taco Bell in Sheldon. It's just what you did on a Friday night. But sans that, this person has grown, has experienced different parts of life, has been honest with it, and has been able to channel a lot of his life experiences through some incredible music. I was completely blown away when the first time someone had told me he even played music. And now, so many years later, I am completely blown away because this man creates some of the most incredible music that I love to listen to, and that is no nonsense. I don't blow smoke. I want you to put your hands together, not if you're driving. If you're driving, you keep your hands at 10 and 2. No accidents, okay? No accidents. But mentally, put your hands together for Sam Hoyos from Playing Dead. Sam, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thank you for having me. And to anyone listening to this while driving, you could still smack your steering wheel. It's all right. Instead of clapping, just do that.
Yeah, there you go. That's the first person to jump onto that aspect. I appreciate that very, very, very much. So Sam, man, it's been a journey. It's been an adventure. For those out here in the New Haven market that don't know what Playing Dead is, you are not a Grateful Dead cover band, although they try to buy your name as much as possible. What is Playing Dead? How did it start? And what kind of brought you to music? Because that's still a mystery to me, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Because the way I was living was definitely not of that world, but I always played music. I always had a guitar, but I never played with a band. It was just, I just had a guitar, and I always music was a big part of that life. Somewhere along the way, I got into different, other trouble and definitely law type stuff. So once I got out of that, I think I was genuinely 24, and one day I was 24. I was you know what? I was let's start a band.
There you go.
And which wasn't the easiest thing to do, because in my head I thought I came from this world where, in my world, I was I thought I was cool, and we did all this cool stuff, but it was with on a different playing field, not to be cryptic, but you could fill in the blanks. And then from there, once I go in at 24, 25 to play music, it's mentally I'm there, but ability wise, I'm a teenager. I might as well have been a 13-year-old guy in a garage band, learning a power chord. So it took a minute, the ideas I had in my head were, took a minute to basically learn. I had to take vocal lessons from this lady, Melissa Cross, who's pretty well known. But music was always such a big deal to me that once I immersed myself in that, and I realized that I had to start from the absolute bottom of the floor. and no one cares who I used to be in whatever world I was in. You were just some guy who was not very good at like playing guitar or singing, you know. And then that was like the journey, man. And from there, it's just it's been great. I love it. It's what I do, and I've been doing it for a long time.
It's so true, and I mean that's such an echoing aspect of it. Like I have also been the person that has played guitar very poorly and didn't necessarily know how to sing. And it was through those experiences where you go out there and you continue to go and grow. And it really is, it becomes humbling. And for some people, they can't handle that because they are so stuck in the vision of who they used to be that they can't, you know, make room for the person they're supposed to be. And it has actually been an incredible journey to watch you make that room and to watch you grow. And even I've noticed it through your songwriting process. You know, the songs you were writing today are so much more growth and in depth than, you know, the first record or that first single.
I hope. You know, some bands start out like, you know, Appetite for Destruction, and they come out and they kind of like, you know, shoot their you know, they kind of I'm trying to like talk as radio friendly as possible. So they kind of like they do their thing very quickly and they kind of burn out. But then other bands, you know, just like their best record is their fourth or their fifth, you know. It's just like, so I feel like that's kind of like the journey. But also like I kept the name the same because what I realized that mentally to me with the name Playing Dead, which was really just a horror movie reference, if you have like zero fan base, you could like basically we could keep the name the same, but if you listen to the stuff that we did back then or in the middle or today, it's like three different bands. I could have changed the name three times, you know, different members except for me and Dave Gasal. You know, we've been the same members forever. But yeah, like we just kept the name and kind of changed it, not changed the sound like on purpose, but it was like, okay, like I don't like to be under an umbrella. If I want to write an acoustic song, then I'm going to do that. If I'm going to do something heavier, then I'm going to do that, you know. So that's what makes it exciting for me. Growing up adoring a band like Smashing Pumpkins, for example, which is a pretty popular band. You know, they have the softest of the soft and the heaviest of the heavy. So that's kind of like the blueprint that got stuck in my head.
No, it definitely, and you can really feel that, you know. Also, I know that, you know, Fountains of Wayne, phenomenal songwriting aspect. You know, you can feel the influence through that as well. As you continue to move forward and you continue to push on, you know, is there going to be what I like to call more of the evolution, or have you found your final Pokemon form and are you just sticking with it?
Nah, yeah, we so in the last couple of years, so Jason, who plays keyboards and sings backup in the band now, him and his wife kind of joined our band. They were in a band called Go Big. And one day we were playing a show with his other band, which is High School Football Heroes. And I realized that they had done a cover of a song of ours called December Blue. And I heard it on YouTube. And I was like, damn, I was like, that's pretty damn cool. I was like, it sounds great. It was like him and his wife doing like a piano version. And at that time, we were writing an EP called Catharsis of Choice. And I had a song called 16, which was like kind of like autobiographical of the time that, you know, I ran into some law enforcement issues for sure. So if you listen to that song, technically I was 17, but 16 rolls off the tongue way better. So at that moment in time, they came, they recorded that song with us, and I like the keyboards and the extra vocals so much that we incorporated them in basically everything we've done since 2019. So that's kind of where we've been now. And yeah, as far as like changing, like I don't really know, because then after that we made a record called Clock Tick Motivation. So long story, even longer, I'm gonna say, our drummer Steve DeJoseph, who I think you know, right?
Oh,
Stevie
yeah,
D?
phenomenal mechanic as well.
Yeah, for sure. Shout out to him. Yeah. We love Steve. He's been our drummer forever. So during this pandemic, he decides that he wants to leave. So we're like, okay, that's fine. I think he wanted to play heavier music. And I feel like we might have been going in a different direction as opposed to getting heavier. But I'm talking about like heavier. Like he wants to play like in a band called Torch, or like just like real, like some heavy, like, stoner rock type stuff, which we were not doing. So I was like, okay, pandemic is here. We're not really doing much. I have probably maybe 15 songs that I was just like kicking around. 5 of them sounded completely different than the other 10. So I was like, okay, I have an idea. I'm going to have 3 different drummers on these EPs. We were messing around with the idea of calling it Choose Your Delusion 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, awesome. That's amazing.
So for the first record, I was like, I needed someone who was going to be super nuanced and knows how to kind of lay back on certain things. So that's what Clock Tick Motivation was. We got our friend Vito to play drums on it. He's so good. And he's in a band. Well, yeah, there's still a band called Broadcaster, but he does a lot of really cool stuff. So that record came out and we were just like, okay, this is interesting. Like we have a new drummer and we decided to completely, there's a song on that record called Get It Right. We made a video for it, like somewhere on the beach. And like when we were done like writing that song and recording it, I was like, this sounds like it could be sold on a CD at Starbucks. It was almost like, I'm like, who the hell do I think I am for coming out with something so ridiculous? But I love it. I love, it's still part of us. It's just, and the guys really followed me and allowed us to kind of take this venture. Now for the new record, which is called Something to Tide You Over, we made that right turn. We're like, okay, let's go back to like being synth heavy, guitar heavy, hook heavy. And, that's kind of where we're at now.
And I'm glad you actually brought up that new record, because it is now officially out. It's available on all streaming services. Plus, every first Friday of the month, you want to go down there and you want to go to Bandcamp and you want to actually buy the record. Like, even if you own it, buy it every first Friday of the month. This way things can work out better for the musicians. What has the process of releasing music in the time of, lockdown? Because it used to be you release music and then you play a spit ton of shows and some people might actually like the songs and you can do things. That's not the case right now. And I don't know if really that's going to be the case anymore. Yes, the live scenes are opening up much more, but there is now this new niche market of, just kind of releasing the music and doing stuff like what we're doing right now, sitting and talking on radio shows and podcasts and doing silly things on the TikTok, different ways to go about it. I've noticed that you guys have started to adapt that. I also, by the way, love your Instagram acoustic songs where you just see your hands and the guitar neck. I think it is very, very interesting. And I really, really respect that a lot, especially since I am so vain. I need to be on camera at all times. So I respect your modesty.
Bruh, let me tell you, in the last 10 years, I probably threw on like 80 pounds. I don't think anyone wants to see any part of me other than like the guitar. So just throwing that out there. But so when it comes to releasing stuff, what I realized, we took the band, man, wow, this is going to be really long-winded. I apologize to
That's fine. No,
Preston
not at all.
And anyone
important thing.
So, we took it serious and we would play stuff, but we were never going to be a band that toured. So when you're never going to be a band that tours, your music is going to be limited as far as who it could reach until you got certain tools like Instagram, Spotify, Bandcamp, all these things where you're just like, okay, now I could kind of do my thing and eventually people, take notice. So one day in I would say 2018, I decided let's make a full length because we had just gotten our new guitar player, Rich Ferrara. I was pretty rejuvenated. We write these 10 songs that were very much back to the super chunk influence that we started with. And then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna open up an Instagram, and I don't really know how to use this thing, but I'm gonna figure it out and stuff like that. We made a lyric video for one of the songs. I was like, okay, this is cool. So you start messing around with like all this technology where it's like, I like in-house. I don't like depending on people for anything. I don't want to, I don't like, I want to have the music we create. I want to chop it up. I want to do a whole bunch of stuff and put it out there. It's like, here's a clip, here's a clip. And I like in the very beginning that Instagram only gave you like a minute tops, or like maybe it was 15 at the time. But I think a minute is good, because once you start putting up anything longer than that, I feel like people kind of like zone out. So it's like, if you hit them with a minute, all right, hit them with a minute, hit them with 45 seconds or whatever. That's cool. That's realistic. Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff. So what I noticed with the Spotify streams on this full length in 2018, it's called The Inevitable. From 6 to 10, it dips. I'm like, okay, well, when it dips and you go on tour and you start playing these markets and people are like, oh, I like song 8, I like song 9, I like song 10. We weren't doing that. So I'm like, you know what? This seems like a waste of time for a local band that loves making records. I feel like the last 5 songs are getting lost. There's no need for us to ever put out 10 songs to play Mr. Beery's once a month. Because it just doesn't make sense. We're playing to same people. We're playing to our friends. That's it. So I'm like, okay, from now on, we're going to record more, but we're going to do less songs. So every 6 months, we're going to drop, 5 songs. And that's what we did. And then my buddy Neil Rubenstein, who's a comedian on tour everywhere right now, we make the first video for the song Start Today, which is off the next record. I'm like, okay, yeah, I remember. So Catharsis of Choice was the 4-song EP that came out in 2019, because after we wrote The Inevitable, I listened to those songs and I'm like, they're good, but they didn't really have this hook. Like, I feel like a lot of them were like, it was just fun guitar parts to play and the velocity was cool. But I was like, you know what? I was like, I want to write 4 like super hooky songs. And then I feel like that's what we did. And then we made this video for Start Today, which was so much fun to do. And to actually see like a video and you put it up on YouTube, which is another great DIY tool. You start your YouTube channel. And then from that moment on, I would say like 2019 to where we are now, like I really started to maximize what the tools we had. Obviously, some of us lost the year with 2020, but it just allowed us to kind of sit home and like, it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. I don't know, you kind of like, it allowed me to put up more clips and like mess around with stuff, too. And I think that kind of helped out. And I think as time went on, people appreciated those acoustic versions of certain things. And they're like, all right. They're like, some of your songs are whack, but some of your songs are not. And I'm just like, all right, that's cool, but like, who's going to like everything you put out? So I think it just, if you maximize these tools, and you not that you don't have to go on tour, but for someone like us that success is not really like a thing, it's like if 100 people listen to our song, we're like, that's pretty amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I love that. And that is one of the coolest things. I don't know really if you know this, but I've been trying to make it in this industry since forever and ever and ever. Amen. And you in particular, in some of the times where I have, social media spiraled out of control and I was done and throw my hands up, you were the first person to be like, bro, just play music, like shut up and play music. And I was like, every time I'm like, yo, that means like the world to me. And I started to reevaluate that. So I really want to give you your flowers for that and really thank you for that. I don't know if you really knew that, but that really did mean the world.
Nah, yeah, man, I appreciate that, because like, sometimes I say a lot of dumb stuff and that seems like a not so dumb stuff. So maybe maybe that's, because to me, like I do have that conversation and for someone like me, yeah, I don't know. I'm just like a realistic person. Like, I don't think, I'm like, yo, just play. Like, just play. Yeah. Just like, it's the feeling like Preston. I don't know if you're a musician or... Are you?
I'm not a musician, just a broadcaster on WNHH LP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Prestige, and my partner in crime, Long Island Raised, Elm City made EZ BlueZ is in the building, all behind the brand. And I hope
good
question, Sam. I really hope I did.
All right, yeah. Well, all right.
So good.
What I'm saying is, like, certain things like you get passion from, so like if for me it's like still getting like so then I guess I'll like Dustin would know what I'm talking about, like when you finally hit that right chord progression and you're like, oh my god, the A minor works so good now that this chorus is amazing. Like that has never stopped being cool to me. Like that has never stopped. Like once you get that missing piece to whatever your passion is, like even if you're like, painting something and you pick the right color or whatever it is that you do a podcast or radio show and like, you like have this like thought, you're just like, wow.
Yes, that little thing that means so much. I totally get where you're coming from. Yeah.
And that's why we're here, because it's like if once you don't have that and it's like just kind of like whatever, like I'll just record this or whatever, it's not a big deal, then I don't get it. But to me, like that passion is just fuel, man. It's never stopped. So when I tell you to just keep playing, that's just, to me, like I'm too dumb not to. I'm like, that's what I love to do. I'm like, I don't care if no one's listening. It's like, it's like the way these chords made me feel that I finally got this song. It's like, can't beat that.
Have you ever had those thoughts behind the scenes? Like, have you ever been like a producer or engineer for a track for somebody else and have that same mindset when it comes to creating?
So there's been times where, like one specific time I remember, writing stuff for like other people. One of my buddies who's playing drums on the next record. So his name's Mark. He plays drums in a band called Taking Back Sunday, which is obviously a pretty big band. So he's playing drums for our next EP, which is going to be really cool. Me and him were writing a song for this girl, and, he's hard on me sometimes. He sends me this track and he's like, I want, write something like really like catchy, and it's going to be for like a female singer. And I was like, all right, cool. Like I sent him over the first version of it and I was like feeling myself. I'm like, it's cool. I'm like, I'm like, send. I'm like, awesome. Right. And he was like, he's like, nah, he's like, that's not it. And I was like, what do you mean it's not it? I'm like, I sang it like I would sing, like if I was like a female or like an Adele or something, you know what I mean? Like that's where I came from. And he's like, and he said to me, he's like, I asked you to do it because I want you to do your version and we'll have her sing that version. And like something clicked and like, it's like, and then I sent them back the second one. It was like, that's it. And it was so cool, like to actually be behind the scenes and like work on something that you're going to give to someone. And, on those occasions that I do get to work behind the scenes, as far as like melody making and all that other stuff, it's a lot of fun for sure.
Nice. Go ahead, Easy.
Now, you say the once a month shows playing at Mr. Beery's and all of that, which for those who are who are Long Island, raised, when you're playing in a band, it becomes goal at one point to get like a residency at Mr. Beery's, because that is just that venue. I have played with Randy Jackson at Mr. Beery's, and it was the weirdest night of my entire life. It's just
Randy Jackson. Randy Jackson's the same Randy Jackson.
No, Randy Jackson
from Zebra.
Oh, okay.
Randy Jackson from Zebra.
Instead of Randy Jackson, the first person in my head was the person in the blue. Well, I think we already know what I'm talking about. But go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Funny story about Randy Jackson.
Yeah.
So like,
let's talk about Randy Jackson.
Yes. I do a podcast called Red River Podcast, and like his people reached out to me, and I was like, wow, that's the most random request ever. And they're like, it was like before his show, like somewhere in Westbury, and I'm like reading this email. I'm thinking like, why us? I'm like, we talk about movies, music, and pop culture, and we don't have that type of fan base where like, like Randy Jackson fans are not going to be looking at Red River for that content. But to me, I'm thinking like, it's like, this is Long Island. I'm like, let's do it. I'm like, I don't care. I'll try it out.
Gotcha.
And I told his people, I was like, yeah, I was like, let's do it, and I never heard back. they probably had like this like long email thing and sent it out to everyone, and like somebody double check, and they're like, who the hell is Red River Podcast, and why does Randy have to talk to them? So shout out to Randy Johnson, Randy Jackson.
That guy too.
Nah, definitely not that guy, because I wasn't feeling him or Kurt Schilling in 2001. So
it's true. No, but like no joke. That's how like random Randy Jackson is. Like at one point, I was working with Power Music Production Promotion out on Long Island. Andrew Sulu. I don't even know if he's still booking shows. But he's like, okay, we got Randy Jackson doing an acoustic thing. Come down with your guitar player and do an acoustic aspect. And it was just so interesting to see, because he actually shows up and he actually like sits in with like the other people in the crowd. So then you're just playing and you're like making eye contact with Randy Jackson, and you're like, all right, cool. And like in Mr. Beery's, at one point you actually had to walk past the band to use the bathroom. So yeah, and so he had to use the facility. So he walks by, and like, again, we're playing acoustic music here, and he walks by and he throws up the devil horns and sticks out his tongue. He's like, yeah. I was like, this is odd. I think I want to go home now. I'm not quite sure how to deal with life. But it was just that type of moment, and those are the incredible Long Island weirdness moments that happen in that scene. You have been in the scene for a long time. You have seen it grow. You have seen it go. I always say that because there is so much distance between venues, it makes it a little bit harder for original music. Some player out here, we're in a small city. There's a block where there's 7 venues that are playing. Have music playing on every single night. So it's a little bit easier. Yeah, no, I definitely want to get you guys out here.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that. The State House or the Cellar would be dope. Actually, the Cellar I think would be really, really dope for you guys out here.
Okay.
So
it's slim pickings out here.
Right. No, it's slim pickings out there, but you also have this incredible philosophy, and it's something that I really do respect. You've mentioned it several times already in this interview of, you really just want to play it, and you don't really care. If it was up to you, you probably hook up some speakers to the car and, play in a parking lot at one of the amazing beaches that is Long Island. Just not on the super hot days, because guys like us melt in that super heat stuff, but maybe like in the fall.
I anything above 55 is pushing it for me.
Yeah. I agree. I understand. We're fluffy, and that extra fluff, gives. By the way, welcome to the club. I mean, I've been here my entire life. You just came in the past couple of years, and welcome.
Yeah, I'm in. I'm definitely in. Unfortunately, for the time being.
Has that been, in dealing with the Long Island scene, has that really helped hone this? I'm going to play for whatever, and I'm just going to enjoy every single aspect. And then to counter on that, we are going to get to the bigger question. You and I grew up on Long Island. You and I took that LIRRR in to see some incredible shows in New York City. What was it like for that Long Island boy to finally grace the stage of Irving Plaza, where you have seen some of the best shows of your life? I know you have, because I've seen some of the best shows of my life there. So let's get into that 2-part question.
So I don't remember the first part. So the second part, so I'll do it in reverse if you want.
Perfect.
It's fine.
So yeah, Irving Plaza was a really big deal. Like last year, I feel like we kind of got the work that we put in from 2019 to, I guess, 2020. It wasn't we really didn't have much leeway, kind of like all came crashing down and gave us a lot of really cool stuff. We got to release some music, and then we got to play some really cool shows even after our drummer left, which was even more interesting. So we played a really cool place in Patchogue, the Loading Dock, which is basically the Patchogue Theater. The Coney Island Brewery show was great, and then that led us into Irving Plaza, which I think we played in like November. And that was a big deal, because it's just like you said, it's just, if you live here and you grew up here, going to Irving Plaza was just like, you know, for us, I remember the goal we would always just say, we're like, yo, if we ever play Irving Plaza, we'll break up. Like, that's all we ever really wanted to do. We wanted to play with one of our favorite bands, Sam I Am. We're like, if we get to open up for Sam I Am and play Irving Plaza, then it's like, there's no point. It's like, we'll just break up. So that was such a cool thing to get to do. And once, you know, you get like a little nervous because sometimes, you know, you look and you're like, do we really belong here? I'm like, maybe we're terrible. And, you know, because no one ever knows that they're terrible. You know, other people might be like, oh, you're terrible. But when you're playing and you're up there, like, you never feel that way. You never think that. So that thought creeps into your head and you're like, I'm like, maybe we're terrible. And once we start playing, you know, they'll be like, hey man, thanks for coming. And it'll get us off the stage. But once we did sound check, you realize the level of sound system and wedges and all these things that you're just like, wow, you're like, this is what we sound like. This is what music sounds like. Everything sounds so crystal clear. And we did like, you know, maybe like a song and like 2 half songs for sound check. And we were like, wow, I think we're ready. And yeah, and it was Magical Night. Then we did the 3 Taking Back Sunday shows, which were sold out. And there was 2 at Mulcahy's, like 1,800 caps, like people out the door. And then we did Starland in New Jersey. And yeah, that was wild. Starland might have been like the wildest one. So it was a trip.
That is incredible. That is absolutely amazing. And honestly, well deserved. You know, you've been out there and not only, you know, promoting it and showing and highlighting what you do, but you have always been one of the biggest proponents of talking about, you know, Taking Back Sunday or talking about, you know, these other acts. I remember you were talking, I think there were some people from like LA or different areas, and you were telling people on the interwebs, you know, you guys need to be paying attention to this act. You guys need to, you know, if you know, those in the know understand what's going on here. And I think that is really, you know, it pays tribute to kind of the way that you grew up and the scene that was there. I mean, I've been listening to a lot of the books from like the Chili Peppers and the books from, you know, all the bands that came up during that time. And it really was that. I mean, that one book, This Band Could Be Your Life, where they talk about, you know, the 80s explosion of punk. And really how things went through. It was these bands that were just talking about each other, you know, and growing. Before there was the age of the internet, there was the age of that blank tape that would get passed around and mailed to you, because, you know, this other band, or you would go see one of the bands that you were digging and they were wearing a shirt of a different band that you've never heard of. But because that band right there was supporting that band, you went home and you went to one of the places we got bootleg CDs, and you would find, you know, that record and you would listen to it. And you're able to continue that moving forward. And that's another thing that I really respect about what you do. And you do it with this incredible podcast. So let's talk a little bit about the podcast. You mentioned it.
I just want to shout out that awesome flex where you were like, I listened to these books, you know, technology is wild. You're like, yeah, listen to I'm like, wow. I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah, because I hate reading. So when someone says I listen to these books, I'm like, I want to fist bump you from over here. So I'm like, I feel that.
There you go.
Yeah, let's talk about this dumb podcast. Red River Podcast. Go ahead.
Red River Podcast. Now, this is another incredible thing that has been a part of your personality as long as I've known you. You've always had the horror shirts. You know, Halloween, you kind of like were a different human being, and it was great to see. And now this has become an extension of what you do. What started Red River Podcast? What was like, hey, let's move forward in this direction? You know, how did it all happen?
Okay. All right, so, you know, we would hang out, and my friend Brian Parker would have like these horror hangs where we would. he would invite us over and we would put on like a movie, and literally no one watched the movie. Like we would watch and maybe it would get to an actress and be like, oh man, remember that movie she was in? And then it was like a 30-minute detour. So it was just like it was like a hang. It was like a hang with like probably like 20 people just sitting there watching and like eating and just laughing until your stomach hurt. And one day we were just like, well, it wasn't me. Like he was like, we should do a podcast. And I was like, I just, at that point, I was probably doing 3 bands, you know, and it's just like, I'm like, you know, when you have a girlfriend or someone, you know, a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, a significant other, it just, eventually you need to carve out some time for them too, you know, because if it was for me, I'd be in 3 bands, I'd have 4 podcasts. I'd just, you know, I'm like, I wouldn't be home, but so I wasn't hearing it. And then as time went on, he kept mentioning it. And I was just like, also too, when I start something, I get very much into it. If it's a passion project, it's not like I'm not going to just kind of like do it and then not do it. Like I get really obsessive with it. So once I knew I was going to be obsessive over it, I warned everyone. I was just like, okay, I'm like, this is what we're going to do. So let's do it. And then we started it and did a few episodes. I pulled my hair out because I was doing the recording and all the technical stuff for it. And we were like, okay, let's talk movies, music, and pop culture. And, you know, we did take a horror name because Red River is the radio station in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. But we're not like a horror podcast. Occasionally we talk about it, but we like, I never want to limit myself. Like I talked about with the band. So it's like, you know, we just talk to everyone from musicians to directors and stuff. And then somewhere along the way, like episode 9, I had my buddy George, who was in a band called Mind Over Matter on. And after that, we kind of branched off and I did If I Rule the World for like a few years. And that was wild. Like on that show, we had everyone from like Phil Anselmo to like Michael Allig to like Michael Dowd, the cop from the 7-5. Like that show was crazy. We had some wild guests, like from like people from like music scenes, like VOD to like, you know, just anything you could think of. And that ran. And then George moved away and I just continued doing Red River. And somewhere along the way, once this Zoom thing came into play, I kind of kicked it open because it's before that, it was just like, I'm going to go there. We're going to set up. We're going to talk. We're going to hang out. Once pandemic hit and Zoom hit, it's like, okay, I'm going to open up my laptop and talk to people. At that moment, you're just, it's like, okay, I'm rapid fire, you know, I'm gonna load the clip and just keep going until like it's like 2023, you know. So that's kind of what we've been doing, and we do a bunch of stuff, man. You know, we just talked to the director of the Foo Fighters movie. Wow. But then we did like an episode on raunchy comedies, you know what I mean? So it's like whatever we're feeling, like if you're, you know, just whatever you're thinking, and we don't care because it's like, all right, some people will listen to this episode, some people won't, but it's like we just open up the laptop and it's like, this is the topic, let's do it.
So of course now we have to come to that wonderful point where we make you choose which child, right? Who is your favorite guest? Who was the most incredible guest to have on? What was that moment where you were like, wow, this is awesome? And it doesn't necessarily have to be anyone super famous. It could be like, my downstairs neighbor was one of the coolest people ever, and it was the best show I ever had. Or it could be, you know.
So I've done like 300 episodes, maybe 350. So with the one show, I'm gonna say there was nothing weirder than talking to Michael Allig on If I Rule the World. Like, I don't know if you guys remember who that is. He was like the club kid who like murdered someone, and like you know,
Party Monster.
Macaulay Culkin. Yeah. So that was just like Twilight Zone, you know. And then for Red River, geez, that's an interesting one. I'm gonna pick Brian Usna. So Brian Usna has made movies that I love that probably most people think are terrible. He did a movie called Society. He produced Reanimator. He produced From Beyond, Return of the Living Dead 3, which everyone hates except me. He made The Dentist. So here's a guy who made he was like the king of like direct to video movies, and he was super cool. He came on and we talked for a long time, and you know, I think that one really sticks out in my head, where it's just like, you're Brian Usna, let's talk, you know, movies. And what I love about what I do is just I don't care. Like, to me, I'm like, you're like, to most people, they would think these movies are ridiculous, or whoever we have on, but it's like, I want to talk to the person that like affected me either as an adult or as a kid. And like renting these movies, I'm like, but that's the beauty of technology now. It's like, okay, before I would have to find his home address, mail him a letter. Now it's like, okay, you have an email address. Oh, you have an Instagram. Okay, even better. I'll just send you this message, because on a normal planet, you would not know these people. You wouldn't be able to reach these people. But now it's like we're so connected. And that's the beauty of being connected, is that there is no wall like that. You know, I don't understand. Like, some people use social media, what I consider in like such a terrible, ridiculous way. It's like, man, it's like, yo, take a picture of your lunch. It's pretty awesome. You know, talk to your friend who you don't live in the same state with, and like, you know, like maybe reach out to someone if you have a podcast and they want to talk about it. And that's it. It's the beauty of me reaching out to Brian Usna, who makes these movies that really hit me as a youth. And he was cool and open to talk about it. And the majority of the planet would just not even care. But to me, it's a big deal. And I please myself. I love it. You know? Love it too on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Prestige, and my partner in crime, Long Island raised, Elm City made, EZ Blues is in the building. EZ Blues, continue.
Now, for all those that do follow Sam on social media, there has been this one constant theme that happens, and he blesses everybody with this every couple of years when this pseudo crazy genius releases what he likes to call music. Sam is the first person to tell you the incredibleness of Corey Feldman. Have you started the process of trying to get him on the podcast? I think you can land him. I really do think he'd be awesome. So here's the thing about being realistic in everything that I do. We are complete nobodies. He's going to look at us. He's going to be like, who cares about, like, Red River, like, he would just be like, no. He's like, how many listeners do you have? How many followers? And like, once that happened to us one time, I remember when I had a friend, he made a movie, and in that movie he had Bill Moseley. So Bill Moseley is an actor. You could look him up, you know, Devil's Rejects and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So he was like, let me put you in touch with his manager. And like, she was like, well, how many listeners do you have? And like, once I gave her like the stats, she's like, oh no, she's like, come back when you have X amount. And I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I shot the shot, and I get it, because it's like at the end of the day, everyone has a podcast. Everyone's trying to get the same people. So it's like, you're maximizing your time. And if you're Bill Moseley, and not even him, he probably has no idea. It's like, it's his management. It's like, you want my client? You know, there's 100 other podcasts that want him. Like, tell me why you should do yours. So with Corey, I had somebody reach out to me, and they're like, yo, I'm good friends with his best friend. I'm like, let me throw that in there. And I was just like, oh, I'm like, yeah, that's how you get someone. That's how we got the dude that made the Foo Fighters movie. It's like, he's a good friend of a friend of mine. And I didn't ask for it, but like, my friend's like, yo, it's like, my friend made this movie and he's awesome. And I was like, yo, I'm like, absolutely. Like, why wouldn't we talk to that dude? So it was, we got blessed with that one. So I tried to do the same thing with Corey Feldman, you know, but I would have to delete every comment in that thread, because obviously the video is definitely not for everyone. I'm sure he thinks it's amazing and good for him. But yeah, no. So
I talk, we talked to his best friend who like represents a lot of people, and he was like, he's like, Corey's not really doing podcasts. I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like, I completely get it.
Mm-hmm.
He's not doing that. He'll do Steve O's podcast because he's Steve O from Jackass. You know? So yeah, no, that's not happening.
Yeah. All right. Well, it was. I will put it this way because I am a big fan of Hope. Corey Feldman has played center each. So if Corey Feldman's band can, I opened for him. It was crazy.
I have Hope tattooed on my hand. But
there you go.
So, but I'm also realistic. I'm just that's what it is. I'm not. I don't have a delusion about certain things.
Yeah.
So my friend Brian Langan, who I do the podcast with, mentioned that. He was like, yo, if he played center each because he was there, he'll definitely do the show. But I mean, I think that was just kind of like, we were joking. And it's funny because I don't know how he got Dr. Dre's son on that track, but shout out to that flex, because it was wild to put that together. And it's, there's something very endearing about believing in your art so much that he put that out and he probably thinks it's great, and some people probably don't. And it's like I put out a record and I listened to it and I'm like, oh yeah, I think we did a good job. I'm sure there's somebody somewhere thinking like, this is the worst. Somebody would rather listen to Corey Feldman than listen to the EP we just put out. And I get it.
True. No,
it's
look,
true.
It's true. Like I respect the heck out of that. I love that you are that realist. And to be real, obviously right now, the Apollo curtain is starting to get pulled upon us. We are getting the message from higher up that our time is starting to
shout out to the Sandman.
Shout out to the Sandman. I want to give you this time right now to tell the people how they can get in touch with Playing Dead, how they can support Playing Dead, how they can learn about, your incredible music. And again, man, I am truly a fan, and I love your journey, and I love that it has brought you here. And I am looking forward to sipping a cup of water with you, or maybe some coffee at both the show on the island and out here in New Haven.
Yeah, man, for sure. We'll do that. But yeah, I don't know, Playing Dead NY. There is a Grateful Dead tribute band that has the same name, and it kills me. It breaks my heart. But yeah, just if you Google Playing Dead NY, you could put 2 and 2 together as to who plays covers and who doesn't.
Right. Yeah.
So,
although I would like to see a tie-dye version of your shirt just for fun.
Yeah, that would be fun. That would be kind of funny, but yeah, maybe we'll make one.
One.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
Sam, thank you so much. There is that one last thing. You always have to have that one last moment. Any advice that you can give for the musician that is coming up, that, that 16-year-old that is sitting bored in that American history class when they're not learning about anything in particular and drifting off writing songs? If you could speak to that kid right now, what advice would you give them?
First of all, I'm glad I'm not your dad, because I never want kids. But my advice to that kid who probably does not want to hear one word I have to say is just practice. That's it. That's all you have to do is just practice. Listen to everything. Don't listen to one thing. Listen to everything. Hit play and decide if something's good or not. Like I'll listen to Tove Lo, I'll listen to Slayer, I'll listen to Jason Isbell. It's like all these things just make you who you are. Put on Hard to Earn and play the guitar. That's a Gangstar reference for the young kids.
There you go. Appreciate you.
Yeah,
Thank
man.
you so much.
Thank you guys for having me.
Awesome.
On WNHH LP 103.5 FM, New Haven.
Do you think that you're right every time you